There are several stories to enable a question to be asked. First is a story about a king who had 3 sons. They were all taught the ways of the court, and they were taught science and mathematics and all of those other things that are necessary to rule a kingdom. But 2 of those princes were ordained to be very clever and intelligent, and the 3rd one was deemed to be a dimwit. In fact, he was considered to be a fool. So he was shunned by his brothers and mostly ignored by others. So he was left to his own devices. So he took to wandering in the town and learned the ways of becoming a petty thief. So eventually this came to the ears of his father, who was totally disgraced by the thought that he had a son who stole. So he was banished from the kingdom. So the young prince continued to walk about the streets and honed his skill as a petty thief. But then he came across a group of robbers, and he asked them could he join their band. Well, they said to him, "You have to prove yourself to us, prove that you're a reasonable thief." So the prince said, "Bring me a shoe." So taking the shoe, he went down with the band to the main thoroughfare into town, the main road into town, and he placed the shoe right in the middle of the road. Well, the next horse and cart that came by, they saw the shoe in the middle of the road, and the person driving the cart thought, "Oh no, 2 shoes would be good, but 1 shoe doesn't do me any good at all," so he ignored the shoe and went on. So then the young prince came out and took the shoe and ran as fast as he could, so that he was ahead of the horse and cart again, and put the shoe back in the middle of the road. So when the horse and cart came along and saw the other, "Well, there were 2 shoes, I'll just go back and see if I can find the other one." So he left his horse and cart and he ran back down the road to see if he could find the other shoe, but of course the shoe wasn't there. But in the meantime, of course, the young prince stole his horse and cart. So the robbers thought this was pretty clever, but he said, "Well, you just wait, I'll steal his clothes too." So then, of course, the young rider of the cart and horse was driving along the road and looking for the shoe, but then he left his horse and cart and gone, as was said before, and the horse and cart was stolen. And so what the young prince did was he took the cart back to the den where the robbers had, and he led the horse down by the river, and he led it out into the water and tied it to a log. Well, the rider of the horse and cart, of course, looking for his horse and cart, happened to come by the side of the river and see his horse out there in the water, and thought, "Oh, my horse has led my cart into the water," so he took off his clothes and went into the water to retrieve his horse and cart. So, of course, the prince stole his clothes. So the robbers said to him, "Look, you're too clever for us. Just take whatever you want out of our hoard of goods and be on your way. We don't have anything. We can't trust you. You're too clever for us." So, of course, the prince took a goodly quantity of gold out of their coffers, and he went off down the road again. So he found himself in another kingdom, and he learned from the populace that the king of this kingdom had a daughter who was of marriageable age, and he'd made an edict that whoever could guess her name would be married to her and earn half his kingdom. But if they weren't able to guess the name after a certain time, they'd be put in a dungeon and fed bread and water. So the young prince said to himself, I can not only win the princess's hand, but I can do so without learning her name. So with that, he donned princely clothing, and he went to the palace to state that he was seeking the princess's hand. Well, it had been some while since anyone had come along seeking the princess's hand, because those that had come along finished up in the dungeons, on bread and water. So there was a big feast put on by the king to welcome this prince. But in the course of the evening, our princely thief stole the golden goblet out of which the king was drinking. So, of course, the servants noticed that the golden goblet was missing, and so it was decided to frisk all those guests who were at. But it so happened one of the guests was a priest wearing a cassock and a cowl, so our prince hid the golden goblet in the cowl of the priest, who of course was not going to be searched. And so when the party was over, everyone had been searched, he retrieved the golden goblet out of the cowl. Well, of course, all of the palace was up in arms. They would have to do something. How were they going to find this thief? So the councillors were gathered together, and the councillors decided that another feast should be arranged. And this time, gold coins would be strewn across the floor, and whoever it was noticed was bending down to pick up the gold coins, of course, would be the thief, and they'd find him. So this was done. Gold coins were strewn about the floor. But our princely thief went outside where the carriages were gathered, and he took some axle grease off one of the axles and he put it under his shoe. Mm-hmm. So, of course, when he walked around, the gold coin stuck to his shoe, and, of course, he was not found at all. And the count, how could this happen? Because, of course, nobody bent down. So the king, of course, gathered all his councillors together. We have to find this thief. So another reception was arranged, and it was decided this time by the councillors that the princess should wear her diamond earrings, and she should pretend to be asleep in the garden while the feast was going on. And surely the thief would try to steal the diamond earrings. But it was decided that the princess would remain awake, and she would mark the clothing of whoever it was who bent over to steal the earrings. So this occurred. But as we know, our princely thief took the first opportunity he could, when no one was looking, to go over and very quietly and gently remove the diamond earrings from the princess's ears. But of course she did what she'd been told to do. She marked his clothing. But the prince noticed this and took the piece of chalk from her hand and went around and marked everybody's clothing. So of course they couldn't find who the thief was. But none of the king called everyone together and he said, "Look, you're a hopeless lot of idiots. This thief is too clever for us. And I've decided that if this thief will admit to his thievery, then he can have my daughter's hand in marriage without knowing her name." And so the prince stepped forward. He said, "Well, how can you prove that you're going to keep your word?" So the king had to make an edict that whoever admitted. So, of course, our prince took out the golden goblet, he took out the gold coins and the diamond earrings and showed them to the king, who admitted that he was the cleverest of fellows and that he should have his daughter's hand in marriage, and that's exactly what happened, and he got half the kingdom and they lived happily ever after. But the second story is that story about the master thief, who grown quite old by now, and he wasn't quite as agile or as adept as he used to be, but he had a son, and his son decided that he wanted to become a master thief like his father. So he went to his father, he said, "Father, will you please teach me the ways of being a master thief?" And the father said, "Yes, let's come and make a heist." So they pinpointed a very rich palatial kind of a house, and that night they went to the house and found their way, because all of these houses were designed in the same way, and the father and his would-be thief son made their way to what was considered the treasure room of this house. And in treasure rooms they always had a big box where they kept their very, very precious things. So very quietly and adeptly they made their way, and as it happened, because they were a trusting family, the key was in the lock of the chest, and they opened it up and put the treasures into a bag that they'd carried along with them. But suddenly the father, the master thief, dropped one of the objects from this chest on the floor, which made a great clattering sound, which of course woke up the servants and the household. So he said to his son, "Quickly, quickly, get in the box!" So his son hopped into the box and closed the lid, and so the father turned the key, took the bags of goodies and made his escape, leaving his son in the box. So of course the servants came, and the owners of the house came running up to see what all the kerfuffle was about. And there was the young would-be thief in the box. And he was thinking to himself, how am I going to get out of this situation? So, of course, he decided, it just came to him, that he'd make the sound of a rat. And so he made the sound of a rat inside the box. And, of course, the servants followed this sound, opened the box, and allowed our would-be thief to hop out and run for his very life, hop out of the window, and off he went, chased by the servants and the owners of the house. So up hill and down dale he was chased until he just had a thought. He remembered that nearby there was a well. So he quickly ran to the well, and taking the rope and the bucket, which was used to draw up the water, he used the rope to climb into the well. He remained as quiet as a mouse, and the servants came up, and the owners of the house came up, and they looked. Where is he gone? He's not to be found anywhere. So, of course, they gave up the chase and went back to their house. So our young man, wet, bedraggled, and rather exhausted, went back to his father's house and said, "Father, I asked you to teach me how to be a master thief. Why did you do this to me?" So the question is, what did the father say to his son?
I taught you your lesson.
What did this master thief father say to his son about the lesson in being a master thief that we can translate ourselves into recognizing our mastership, where we are, and why? What did this master thief father say to his son in reply to, "Why did you do this to me?"
That's how you become one.
Where would we be? Would we be where... No, I'm not going to tell you.
Like a quick wit of Mrs. Rose.